Dan Haley believes growing community media's storytelling model is broken. What's being done to fix it? Welcome to the Backstory Project, where the story behind the question is told, and we get a window into the people who affect the life of our communities. I'm Annie Slavinsky, and I've been working with Open Door for many years as actor, teacher, and director.
My name is McKinley Johnson, and I've been with Open Door since 2006 as a playwright and a director. In this timely interview, Dan Haley takes a deep dive into the role of local community journalism as a provider of information on all facets of a community's life. And he shares why his organization went from being a for-profit business to a non-profit organization. If you find these interviews worthwhile, we ask you to consider donating to Open Door. Your support will allow the company to continue their storytelling and these interviews.
Just visit our website at opendoortheater.net and click on that donate button. We appreciate any amount you can offer. And now, Dan Haley.
You know, we spent 25 years, first 25 years, where we put out a newspaper, or 4 newspapers, whatever it was, every Wednesday. And if someone got murdered on Thursday, we were screwed. There was nothing we could do about it. The good news was that, you know, there wasn't Facebook and Twitter that were sharing that news, so there might be some, you know, talk around town, but people would still be eagerly waiting for our coverage of the big story the following Wednesday, when we finally got around to it, or finally had another chance to publish. Quaintly, there were 2, 3, 4, 5, I don't know, times in that first 25 years when we actually published extras. We went out to the printer in Elgin and we put together 4 or 8 pages about something. You know, often it was a political election. And we would have our kids, our carriers, at L stops saying extra, extra, handing out copies like out of, you know, an old movie. And that always was a rush, but not something you could do very often. So when the arrival of digital has been really freeing, in that we are not bound by a weekly print deadline. We can break stories as often as we are able to, and we do. We limp toward a digital first approach. We are still too caught up in the weekly print deadlines, although we are up virtually every day now online. In February, January, after 10 years, we went up with brand new websites that are far improved, better newsletters, e-newsletters, much cleaner, more modern. So the digital space is really important to us. We have 5, 6, 7,000 people who pay for print among the papers. We love those people. I pay for print because I love a newspaper, the physical newspaper. That is more of an old person's thing. Not entirely. There's still value and there's still a lot of coolness in print, but it is more of a middle and older person's game. But we have those group of people who are paying us for print, and we put it in the mail. It's where a lot of our revenue is from advertising still, which we are grateful for. We have another 14,000 people among our 4 flags who are digital readers, who we have an email for. So you put those 2 things together in any one of our towns, and our reach into these towns is stronger now than it has ever been. We're going deeper in terms of total number of readers. And we have both the immediacy of a digital breaking story, And we have the more, curated version that comes out on Wednesdays in print. People like you, people like me, read both. We have some, I think, fairly significant overlap between our print and our digital readers. So they're both great ways to get news. I read the New York Times in print on Sundays and digitally the rest of the week, and they're both wonderful experiences. I think the biggest challenges we face from an editorial point of view are, and increasingly, is just a lack of resources to cover all of the stories we ought to be covering, and to cover them as well as we ought to. We are generalists, and that is both the beauty of being a reporter is that you can go and write about anything, but it's also the shortcoming in that there are things we write about and I know we don't fully understand them, or we don't understand them as well as we ought to. A lot of those have to do with municipal and school finance, where covering those things is hard, and we don't have the expertise. We traditionally are kind of while we have people who've worked with us for years and years, we also are a place where young reporters come and stay for 2 or 3 years and then move on somewhere else, and so we don't always have the continuity, institutional knowledge. So I think we have failed to cover well the more complex stories of municipal and school governance. And at the same time, we have increasingly, we have too often just covered school board meetings and considered it done, when the real news in schools happens in buildings, in classrooms. It happens in the parent level and the teacher level, and we aren't able to tell those stories right now as well as I wish we could. I think it's an important role for us to let people know that an issue is developing and that this is their moment to learn, to act, to respond. But I think we have a deeper responsibility to try to be able to at least, not at a, forensic accounting level, but to be able to understand budgets better. There is a quote which I can't think of, but it has to do, with ultimately a municipal budget, a school board budget is the values of that board and of that district. Where you spend your money tells you what they value. And so being able to at least interpret and report on trends on where money is going is part of our job. There was, I don't know what this was in the 70s, the Chicago daily newspapers were reporting with astonishment that the Chicago public schools had gone literally bankrupt. And the next story was, well, how the hell is it that you didn't know the Chicago schools were about to go bankrupt? And the answer was because our reporters aren't accountants, and we didn't dig into the budgets, and we didn't understand that this was more than just, hyperbole. The schools went bankrupt. So we have a responsibility. We do our best. It's not as good as it ought to be. I don't think how we cover our towns is radically different, actually. I don't think so. Maybe it should be, but it isn't. Here is a fundamental change that we are working on. A year plus ago, as we were starting the conversion to the nonprofit, we were looking for supporters and backers and people to understand what we were doing. And we had a session one night down the street at Live Cafe where we invited local journalists to join us, and we were going to talk about what we were up to. And I said earlier that Oak Park is filled with reporters for the Trib and the Sun-Times and a lot of journalists in Oak Park, radio, TV people. So we invited all the people we knew, and we made the case and said, you know this, we know it, the business model is broken. If we're going to continue to do local journalism, we got to find different ways to pay for it. Readers are going to have to pay more for the journalism if they value it. And then, as I'm talking along, and I don't often, like prepare detailed speeches, I said, but the other thing we need to acknowledge is that it's not just the business model that's broken. Our storytelling model is broken. Maybe because we've been telling too many stories the same way, but more critically because we've been talking to the same people for too long. It's easy to cover a board meeting. It's easy to call the superintendent or the school board president. It's harder to find the 5 parents who are dealing with some really troubling issue involving their kids and to figure out if that concern has a legitimate basis, and then to convince those parents to talk to us because it's a small town and why do they want their name in the paper, and their kids are going to be on the playground. So, and this is now in the mission statement for the new organization we formed, is that our real way at the top of our list is we need to talk to people who are not often heard from. We need to hear voices that are often ignored, overlooked, not even acknowledged as really existing. And that has to be a foundational change in what we do. There are too many people who have been marginalized even in relatively affluent communities like this. And this gets into the whole issue of equity. That the debate on equity is the evolution of the debate of 1980 and kind of black family and a white family live on the same block. We've grown so far from that, and that was a bold and sincere and self-interested effort. But now the discussions are much more complex, and we need to tell more complex stories. We need to throw the door open a lot wider, because we are not necessarily the place people want to first think to come to talk to. Trust needs to be built, respect. So one of the things that we are, will be announcing, soon, weeks, I hope, is that one of the people you're talking to is Michael Romaine, who's been with us now for 4 or 5 years. Michael is going to be promoted to a new position called Equity Editor, and his beat across all of our flags will be issues of equity. Education, business, religion, government of all sorts, healthcare, environmental, could be a story in any of these areas. So Michael will cover issues of equity. The other piece of it, though, the flip of it is, and it's something that you gotta keep the ability to have your eyes opened. And I've, after I get hit upside the head, my eyes open wide, and I'm open to hearing. So we did another session last year down the way at Live Cafe, and this was a group of people we assembled who are involved in equity work in all of the 7 neighborhoods we cover. It's a fascinating group of people. And we hired Rashida Graham-Washington to, who was the owner of the cafe, to facilitate the discussion. And we told her, here's kind of parameters of what we want to hear from these people we've gathered. You know, it was intended to be pretty much our listening to people. And it was great. It was a great evening. And then, you know, I think this was not anything that I knew about. She said, okay, now let's do part 2. And she said, we've been talking about equity reporting and what would that look like. Now let's talk about equity in reporting and what does Wednesday Journal need to know? And what does Wednesday Journal, growing community media, need to do in its own house to be equitable, to reflect equity. And so that is, you know, 1,000% right. We have much to learn about how we can be a more equitable organization, despite, you know, our sincere effort, sincere efforts over years. So the other part of what Michael will be working on is looking internally in terms of working with all of our reporters about the reporting that they're doing, and are they looking at things with an eye toward equity. And then, just in terms of this small little organization, what are we doing internally to learn how to do this better? Part of it is hiring. As we've gotten smaller, we have frustratingly become whiter. And so our minority representation on our staff right now is not very big. So we need more reporters of color, more people of color, and hiring those people is got to be considerably more intentional than it's been in the past. So that's one of the things that we're working on, and then Michael will lead us on. And we happily have an opportunity, because of our fundraising and the generosity of a donor over the next 3 years, is number one is for Michael to take this new position, but that will open up a full-time job as an education reporter. So we will finally be adding a person to the newsroom as opposed to subtracting as we've done for the last 10 years. The goal of the nonprofit, as our advertising dollars have diminished, our choice was, are we going to ride this straight down to the bottom and then disappear? Or are we going to try to find some different way to create local news that is sustainable? So we have become a nonprofit due to the generosity of the dozen people, including my wife and I, who were the final shareholders of Wednesday Journal Incorporated, and who a year and a few months ago donated all of our shares in that corporation to the nonprofit. And we are creating this unique, overused word, but a unique hybrid nonprofit. We will still sell all the ads we can sell. Advertising is wonderful, has great value, builds commerce and community. We will sell all of the print subscriptions we can, and we will try to raise the prices so that people are paying more of the editorial news gathering cost, and we will add philanthropic dollars because we have to have a different revenue stream. And so just like public radio, it's really not a model that much different. We need hundreds and thousands of people to become small annual donors. We need a handful, we need more than a handful. We need a small group of larger donors, medium and large donors. We need some foundation money. We need to raise $400,000, $500,000 a year in philanthropic dollars to allow us not only to continue, but to grow the content. The content is what's important. The reporting, the storytelling is what's important. And the equity editor position and the new reporter is a reflection of that. The fact that, a few weeks ago we were able to launch brand new websites paid for by donors. We are, a week from now, 2 weeks from now, we're going to bring back high school sports, at least for the next 6 months, because we have a donor who will pay for high school sports for spring and summer. So it is a by hook or crook way of building a newsroom. Is it sustainable? I think so. I could be completely wrong. And if I am, then we will diminish and or we will disappear. In the last 18 months when I've been out, before COVID, sitting across, breakfast at George's with the potential donor or supporter, you start to get into habits, and you observe people and you watch, and what resonates with them. And it didn't take long for me to realize that a line that resonated with every single person I talked to. And I kind of backed into it one day, and I saw the eyes open. I said, we might not make it. We might go away. Like a lot of community journalism, which is on the bubble. It could go. I said, if we go away, then Oak Park, River Forest, Austin, any of our towns, they're going to be left chattering at each other on Facebook. And that's going to be the news. And that is dismal and dangerous. And people would nod their heads like, oh my God, that can't be allowed. That can't happen. It's not real news. It is all siloed and special interest and axe grinders. But that's how information will be communicated. Thank you. This is, it is, when someone asks these questions, it's clarifying for me to, try to articulate an answer. This whole process of this conversion has been a clarifying process for me. And it has been a gratifying process. We have built a really stellar board of directors of people, some of whom have some money to give us, some of whom don't have any money to give us, but have knowledge of nonprofit journalism or knowledge of the West Side, but have a real passion for the value of community news. And we have been able to find those people and assemble them. And, the message, we've got 1,600 people so far who have invested. That's a lot of people who have chosen to pull out the credit card or write a check. We've had a few foundations come through. I think people recognize that if local independent community journalism like BEZ or Wednesday Journal is going to survive, that they're going to have to pay something somehow for it. And it's not, it's like a full circle moment. 41 years ago, we sold shares of stock to 75 people. And those people felt pretty damn cool. I own a piece of this local newspaper, and they were proud of it, and they should have been. And now, it's not an ownership situation because we're a nonprofit, but I think we got 1,600 ambassadors who are like, I'm helping to do this, and you ought to think about it too. And that's powerful and gratifying. This has been a life's work, and a good life's work, and I've been living at it. Didn't turn out the way I expected it to, in terms of, at the end I would, cash in and retire happily. So we're really kind of in this startup mode. And what I have said to board members and investors who rightly say, Dan, you're 66 years old, you're going to dry up and blow away someday, and what's the succession? And I say that is a great question, and we really need to focus on that question. It's really important. But in the meantime, I have got 3, 4, 5 years left in which I am determined to see if this model can work. And that's why I'm really working, and all of us around here. This has been a completely shared effort by some really extraordinary colleagues who I could not be prouder of. We are doing something that's never been done before, and that's always exciting and scary as hell.
So much food for thought in that interview. What a gift. And to think that he went from being a boy writing a newspaper for his block to becoming a publisher of 4 community newspapers.
Oh, what a history, an amazing story. Now, our next interview will be a complete change of venue. We'll be hearing from Petros Mordakokis of Al's Grill in Oak Park.
Pete.
Also known as Pete. It will be posted on October 26th. Now, if you're not on Open Doors Constant Contact list, all you have to do is email us at opendoor902@gmail.com and ask to be included on the list. The interview will also be posted on our website the same day. Just click on the Backstory Project for the link to Pete's interview.
And before we leave, thank you to Dan for sharing his story, and thank you to all of our listeners. Once again, if this story matters to you, please consider making a donation to Open Door. Visit us at opendoortheater.net and click on that donate button. Your support in any amount is greatly appreciated.